It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And yes, I am New Jersey's premier award winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022. And of course, your favorite award winning philanthropist, Fernando Uribe. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I want to give a shout out to the world famous Son Cubano restaurant in West New York, New Jersey, as last Thursday night we had a great turnout in the inaugural edition of Memories Matter to benefit the Act Now Foundation, a very warm and very hardworking local nonprofit up here in Hudson County, servicing families being affected by Alzheimer's and dementia collectively in nearby Hudson and Bergen counties. So a shout out to their president, Christine Allen, and their executive director, Carrie Lopez, for partnering with me along with my outstanding co-host, which include Vladimir Carrero, Ilariana Drake, and Lucy Costa, who helped make the event a success. We raised over $4,000 to benefit the Act Now Foundation. Again, for more information, check them out at www.actnowfoundation.org. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so, again, throughout not just Hudson County, but throughout the Garden State as well. Don't forget to check out Jersey First on their website, www.jerseyfirst.org. That's jersey1st.org. Don't forget to like Jersey First on Facebook. And of course, follow them on both Instagram and Twitter, and also on their YouTube page. And again, I want to thank you all for tuning in here, whether it's on Facebook Live via StreamYard or on YouTube. Folks, it's the best analysis and real examination of New Jersey politics, and nobody does it better than yours truly here every Monday Night Live at 6 p.m. Also want to give a shout out to my New York Yankees. Again, a nice weekend, little victory tea here after beating the Cleveland Indians. Yes, folks, I also call them the Indians. I don't subscribe to all this woke nonsense, but good weekend series by my Yankees, and hopefully they'll keep it going here as we close out the month of April. Folks, you want to stick around for the end tonight because I have a great closing segment, as once again, I'll be calling out bad journalism here in New Jersey. And really, there's no shortage of it. But I'll talk about someone specifically. And I think you all know who he is. You definitely want to tune in and stick around for that one. But first, let me welcome to the show here one of those exclusives you don't see anywhere else, folks. He's a good friend of mine, fellow Yankee fan, fellow Cuban, well, half Cuban, just like myself. He is the distinguished Assemblyman out of the 26th Legislative District. He's my good friend, Assemblyman Christian Barranco. Join us here tonight on Real Talk. Mr. Assemblyman, how are you?
How are you, Fernando? Thank you for having me. And I didn't realize that you get sponsored by Son Cubano. Very, very good.
Oh, yes. I love them. It's right by me on the water. Best view of the world. It's a little pricey, but you're paying for the view, basically. But it's also good food, too, in fairness.
What's good costs money.
Yes, exactly. So it's a great venue. I definitely urge my viewers to check it out here, to come out as the weather's getting warmer. They have a great patio and great Cuban food, absolutely in northern New Jersey. So, Mr. Summit, how are you, sir? How's family? How's everybody?
Oh, I'm doing well. This weather's breaking finally. I think we're going to start getting some nice weather here. Things are going well. April is a pretty easy month in the Assembly. There isn't much activity, very few committee meetings or voting sessions. There are no voting sessions in April. So we're going, and we're sort of gearing up and getting ready for the May and June chaos, which is
the budget, sure.
Every year.
Sure, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But for our audience at home that are not familiar with the 26th Legislative District, it consists of multiple municipalities within Essex, Morris, and Passaic County collectively, which include Fairfield Township, North Caldwell, Verona, and West Caldwell, as well as Butler, Jefferson Township, Canillan, Lincoln Park, Montville, Morris Plains, Parsippany Troy Hills, along with Rockaway Township, and in Passaic County, the Township of West Milford. Yeah. Now, we know that due to redistricting, that's going to look a little bit different, and so will your representation next year, right, Mr. Simon?
Yeah, they've redrawn the districts. I will now I'll be running next year in the new 25th district. So they've completely redrawn the districts. They've maintained the districts. They have not made the districts difficult for incumbents. I think, we're dealing with a district that is quite similar to the one that I represent now. The only difference is right now I don't represent any town that has any significant Hispanic minority, where next year they've included Morristown and Dover and Wharton in my district. So we're going to have some fun, sort of campaigning to the Hispanic people.
That's definitely going to be quite a new dynamic for you, obviously, and also in the district as well. We'll talk about Morris County in a minute. It's been in the headlines recently due to the opposing side of the aisle. Their chair recently stepped down. A little bit of a surprise, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's stick to your district, Mr. Assemblyman, because certainly, like any other county and any other district in the state, there's still sort of the same ongoing issues. We still have the highest property taxes in the country at, I believe, roughly somewhere over $9,200, which is madness. We have another gas tax. I'm sure as I breathe tomorrow, maybe a new gas tax is recommended. Who knows what comes out of Trenton, right? We're starting to see the budget ballooning up like a fat kid in a bakery. We'll get to those issues in a moment, but right now you're in the 26th. Next year, obviously, it's being changed around to the 25th. What do you see as the most pressing issues in your district?
Well, I mean, I don't think anything has changed since I ran last year in terms of what the issues are. The first greatest issue in the state of New Jersey, and you hit numerous points in what you just said, is the affordability crisis that we have. I'm born and raised in the city of Paterson. Live in Jefferson Township here in Morris County, and affordability continues to be an enormous hurdle for many, many people in New Jersey. And the biggest issue with that particular problem is it's rather intractable in the legislature. And it's intractable because the government of New Jersey does a very good job of making itself the biggest employer in the state. And we need to stop that. We can't all work for the government. Government is not an enterprise. It never has been. There are way too many people that are getting involved with government that are doing so to get wealthy. And that was never the intent of elected office in this country. We can't continue down this road. We're making government the only game in town. So that is, in my view, that is the basis for the affordability crisis. Government is way too expensive in this state. The truth is, government doesn't do anything. It doesn't build anything. It doesn't make anything. And the bigger it gets, the more intrusive it gets in our personal lives. And we need to stop that.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Assemblyman. And here's just some numbers just for our audience, just to understand how bad the problem has gotten over almost in the last 20 years. Back in 2004, and again, ladies and gentlemen, irrespective of what you think of Jim McGreevey, the man, or whatever, I mean, he's a friend of mine. He's been a fan of this show, has come on this show. I consider him a friend of mine. But back in 2004, when he was governor, he proposed a $21 billion budget, which at the time seemed like crazy to New Jerseyans. And now in 2022, it's my understanding, I think I'm looking at somewhere between $53 to $54 billion that's being proposed in this administration. And it just makes you wonder, Mr. Assemblyman, because I talk about this all the time, and I get a lot of grief from my friends on the left, whether it be media or anywhere else, that say, Fernando, you're too harsh on the left, on the fiscally irresponsible wing of the Democratic Party in Trenton. But my answer is always the same. For 20 years now, one party has had solid majorities in the legislature. We've had Republican governors, we've had Democratic governors, okay? But for over 20 years now, we've had one party have a stranglehold on the purses, as they say, in Trenton. And here's a newsflash. It's not conservatives like me in Trenton, okay, or people that identify with what I do philosophically and intellectually and academically. It's the other side of the aisle. So when we talk about, again, New Jersey becoming unaffordable, continue to become unaffordable, Probably another gas tax on the horizon. The fact that we take taxpayer dollars and we put it into a legal fund to provide legal representations to illegals here, okay, in addition to other sort of big pork in Trenton, it's not conservatives, it's not Republicans that are responsible for that. Because for all intents and purposes, ladies and gentlemen, Democrats have had solid majorities in the legislature. And I'm talking about, like, listen, not all Democrats are bad. Because, for example, where I live in Hudson County, my state senator is also my mayor. And what he's done, and that's Brian Stack, and guess what he's done? He's done a pretty good job of trying to keep property taxes down here. He's done a pretty good job of advocating for, like, hey, let's not spend recklessly or irresponsibly, but it's the fiscally irresponsible wing of the Democratic Party, the woke faction, if you want to call them. And so to me, it's like, hey, they can ram through whatever they want because they have the numbers in terms of votes. So it's not conservatives, it's not Republicans to blame for why New Jersey is becoming a dump. I'm sorry, why people are moving to Florida, why people are moving to the Carolinas or Georgia or the great freedom-loving state of Texas. It's not because of conservatives, Mr. Selman. It's because of really woke Democrats and Democrats that are really bad with economics. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And you know, I've been an Assemblyman for 3 months. It's shocking to me how little the Democratic caucus is even interested in talking with us about what we believe. They have absolutely no interest in promoting any agenda except what comes out of their leadership. They have no interest in working with us, and it really is. I mean, listen, the only people who are suffering the most from that are the residents and the people that we represent. They have a legislature that doesn't really talk to each other, and we try. But
well, certainly, and we know that last November was a bit of a wake-up call for Democrats in the state. Obviously, one of the more important state Senate seats was flipped by Edward.
the most important.
Yeah, probably the most important, right? Because that state Senate seat happened to control the office of the state presidency, the Senate presidency. And certainly day laborer Edward Durr upset Steve Sweeney. There's a new state Senate president, Nicholas Scutari out of Union County. Craig Coughlin remains the Speaker of the Assembly. But to the best of my knowledge, I believe we saw 5 new Republican women in the Assembly going to Trenton. So it was a nice effort by Republicans to shave off a little bit of the majorities that the Democrats have in both chambers, right? But here's another thing, too, that really sort of boils my blood, because I had Chris Russell on a few weeks back. And actually, the week before him, I had David Perano on, the campaign strategist, well, one of them for Governor Murphy. The following week, I had Chris Russell, who was the Chiarelli campaign spokesman. I know he's heading up one of the congressional campaigns down South Jersey, which we'll talk about later. But Chris Russell, to his credit, was quite transparent. I think he owned up to what went wrong. To sort of use a sports term here for our viewers, sort of a Monday morning quarterbacking about what went wrong in November. And, whether it was him and even, your fellow colleague in the Assembly, Christopher Phillips, who's a fan of the show, he's a regular here. He talked about a number that was really striking to me, and that only 39% of registered Republicans came out to vote last November. Yeah. If even 10% came out, we'd be talking about a different governor and maybe in some cases a little bit of a different look in the legislature. Again, Democrats would still have majorities probably, but it would be a lot narrower and slimmer. So, it's a real stark reminder, ladies and gentlemen, that turnout is important. And I think that's going to be something that Assembly Republicans next year in 23 have to focus on, as well as Senate Republicans in Trenton as well, Mr. Assemblyman. Where am I wrong here?
You're not wrong at all. By the way, 5 women we added, and we added a Hispanic to the caucus.
That's right.
So, you hit the nail on the head in terms of Republican turnout. Republican and voter turnout is a difficult nut to crack. For my purposes, I kind of developed a bit of a reputation for being a very hard worker, because I was, running against sort of a 4-term incumbent. So, I knocked on 1,700 doors in 2.5 months. I mean, I was everywhere. The turnout, or rather, I won my election by 20%, 6,100 to 6,700 votes to an incumbent. So that took a lot of work. Getting voter turnout to be large takes work. It takes work on the part of the party, and it takes work on the part of the candidate. I know Jack really busted his butt to get that vote out. I know he did, which is why I say that turnout is difficult sometimes. The party needs a lot of money for turnout. We need to put message out on the street all the time in large numbers, and that's not cheap for them.
No,
that costs a lot of money, and we just need to continue to support the party's candidates as much as we can. Sometimes there's going to be candidates that are not quite everything we want to see, but it's always better than what the Democrats produce.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, that's an interesting point, because we know that. Listen, we're living in a time of just utter tribalism, Mr. Assemblyman, when it comes to our political, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well.
Yeah.
But you touched upon a point, as it pertains to turnout and representation in Trenton. And I really want to pick your brain about this, because if you've been following my show, which I know you're a fan of, and I appreciate that, being fellow Cubans, right? I've been really the only opinion journalist. I mean, Bill Spadilla, I'm not sure if I want to refer to him as an opinion. I'm not sure what he would refer to himself as, but
Bill is a devout conservative.
Okay, no, and so am I. If you watch my social media and this program, like you do, I'm a staunch conservative as well. Now, this is the thing. Other than Bill Spadilla and myself, and we're very different type of conservatives, Bill and I. But what unites us is that we're the only ones talking about the hot button topic right now in Trenton, and that is the sex ed curriculum that has not just garnered statewide attention, but national attention. Right. So a shout out to State Senator Holly Schapese. I know that Joe Panaccio has also been on this, as well as State Senator Testa, all fans of the show, all guests of the show. So I'm grateful to them. But I know that you're also involved with this. This is an issue that's really important to you. But so before we get to what you're co-sponsoring, I've dissected this with a lot of different people, Mr. Assemblyman. I had Matt Freeman on from Political last week. I had different legislators on to talk about what this curriculum means. And I've been calling out, again, the lack of coverage in New Jersey about what it is. Let's separate fact from fiction. We know that parents have the option to opt out their students from curriculum that they don't see fit. But at the end of the day, listen, I'm pretty sure you and I are in the same age demographic. I remember what elementary school was, what middle school was, and what high school was, as it pertains to sex ed curriculum, understanding the female and the male anatomy, understanding hormones. I get all that. Okay. We learned it probably maybe late middle school, early high school. Okay. What I'm not a fan of is, listen, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I mean, I could barely spell gender identity. Okay. Much as understand it. What I think is the issue for parents is it doesn't make them bigots. It does not make them homophobes or transphobes for objecting. But at the end of the day, let kids be kids. Right. Because this is the thing. The left will argue, well, it's a changing world, Fernando. Kids are smarter than we were. They know things that we didn't know at this age, right? That there are gay people. Yes, we are. There are trans people. I get all that, Mr. Assemblyman. But understand something, that the idea of trying to force feed this gender identity. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I went to one of the better urban high schools in New Jersey, Memorial High School in West New York. I passed AP biology, and there's only two genders, folks. So I don't care what the left or the alphabet army wants to claim. There's only two genders, okay? And the idea that we have to start promoting this to someone as early as 6 years old, I'm sorry. Let kids be kids.
Yeah.
Where am I wrong here?
You're not wrong. I mean, listen, we both know there's been gay people since the beginning of time.
Sure.
So there's nothing new in alternative lifestyle, people who live alternative lifestyles. I have friends who have alternative lifestyles, who are homosexual, and everything's fine. We have a great relationship. They live their lives, I live my life, and we move forward. When I started to run, I ran with Jay. He said to me, "Chris, be careful with the press." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "People who don't agree with you are going to say things that maybe are not true." And then I said, "What do you mean? Give me an example." And he said to me, "Well, do you think I hate gay children?" And I said, "There are no gay children. They're children. They don't know what they are yet. A 5, 6, 7-year-old doesn't know what their sexual orientation is going to be. I promise you, when I was 5, 6, or 7 years old, I had no idea what my sexual orientation was going to be. I didn't think of it. There was no need to think of it. I don't know why all of a sudden now we need to start having kindergartners, first, second, third graders thinking about whether they're interested in boys or girls. I have 3 children. They are 17, 14, and 11. And over my dead body will the government get between my children and me relative to what they learn. School boards work for citizens. School boards work for parents. Period. Teachers work for parents. Period. This situation we're in now, where school boards are molding children, is nothing that I approve of or want to be a part of. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do everything I can to get in front of it. And that's why I am one of the prime sponsors of New Jersey's Parental Bill of Rights. I think parents, like I said, school boards, teachers, government, top to bottom, they work for us. We don't work for them.
Well, Mr. Assemblyman, you make a great point. And again, sort of going back to the election last November, obviously it was a very close race. I was the only journalist, for the record, in New Jersey that said this was going to be a much closer race than the polls indicate, because polls are garbage, whether it's Monmouth, whether it's Stockton,
Absolutely.
whether it's Eagleton, they've been garbage forever. And I don't mind saying that because, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
But and not to be braggadocious, because I can be, but I was the only one that said, hey, because of the fact that Democrats have 1 million more registered voters than Republicans do, and the county, parties per se do a lot better job mobilizing than, let's say, some Republican county parties, I think the governor will get reelected by maybe 2 or 3 points. And everyone said, Fernando, you're crazy. He's going to walk on he's going to win. I said, no, there are pockets of New Jersey that are very upset with the governor, whether it was his stands on COVID, right? Because let's be honest, whether it was Governor Abbott in the great freedom-loving state of Texas or Governor DeSantis in the great freedom-loving state of Florida, those governors got it right. While New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut got it wrong. And there were pockets of the state that were very upset with Murphy. And I said, because of that, this race is going to be closer than people think. And I have a lot of free dinners coming my way this year from people that I still have to collect on. But I said, hey, this is something that, whether it's about curriculum, whether it's about government staying out of parents' lives with their children. And guess what? 6 hours south on Route 95 in Virginia, we saw what happens when Democrats arrogantly think, parents should be quiet. They should hush up. No, in Virginia, parents took to the polls because there's a lot. Listen, you can mess with our pockets, Mr. Assemblyman. You can mess with our gas, but you mess with our kids. That's when parents get very galvanized. And you saw it in Virginia, and you saw part of it in New Jersey. It almost came back to hurt the governor, right? Because he barely won. Okay. But again, leading back to your co-sponsoring of the Parental Bill of Rights, this is where, and again, I'm the only journalist along with Bill. Again, maybe Bill won't call himself a journalist, but I'm the only journalist standing up for parents. Okay. My episodes for weeks now have been getting crazy traffic, not because, I'm a nice dresser or because I'm handsome. No, it's not because the content of the show is reaching people. It's because parents are watching and saying, you know what? I need to be involved in school board. I need to go to that school board meeting, and during the public portion, I need to raise hell, not be violent, not be antagonistic, but speak up for your kids because your tax dollars pay for schools. Okay, folks, here's a newsflash. Your property taxes pay for school districts.
Right.
So when parents want to complain, Mr. Assemblyman, they have every right to. And I think that that's a big issue this year.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Like I said, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. The teachers, the school board, they work for us. And they will do what we want them to do. That's how this works. That's how government works.
Folks,
they don't do as they please. They do what we approve of.
Oh, absolutely. Folks, it's 6:25 here on the East Coast. If you just joined us live on Real Talk via Facebook Live on StreamYard and also on the Jersey First YouTube page, it's my pleasure to have on with me the distinguished state assemblyman from the 26th Legislative District, currently the great Christian Barranco here on Real Talk. Mr. Assemblyman, you talk about co-sponsoring the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked to people off the air, whether it's from leading LGBT organizations in New Jersey like Garden State Equality or other journalists that have reached out to me. I mean, at the heart of the matter, what's the issue? Because they're going to say, well, you know, people like Holly Shapizi and Christian Barranco and Michael Testa are just fear-mongering. They're engaging in hysteria. No, we don't want to teach, gender therapy or conversion at 6. We don't want to make kids trans at 6. That's what they're saying. They're saying that Republicans are weaponizing this in an election year. What's your response to
this is not a weaponization. This is not a weaponization. This is not a political tool. I would ask that you always ask people who feel that way if they have children, because that will change the conversation.
Absolutely. I think that's a great answer. And again, it may not suffice with
people who don't have children cannot speak about how parents feel or what parents want for their children. Period.
No, listen, well said, Mr. Assemblyman. Well said. And certainly it's going to be a hot button issue as the year progresses. It is an election year. It's the first midterm election. Certainly, I'm not shy about saying this. I am praying that Republicans win the House. I don't want to see the words Speaker Nancy Pelosi after January 1st of 2023. Okay. I want Republicans to win both chambers and make this incompetent president and his even more incompetent vice president a one-termer. Okay. And listen, we've seen what's been going on, Mr. Assemblyman. These ridiculous gas prices, this caving to the woke crowd, this fixation on pronouns, which I don't care about. It's not important to me. Doesn't make me less compassionate. It's just, in the grand scheme of things, I care about people feeding their families, about the fact that, oh, well, yes, wages are higher. Yeah, but guess what? So is inflation. So you can be earning more, you're spending more. Right. Or again, irresponsible energy policies, or the fact that you're fixating on 35 genders, which we all know don't exist. It seems like Democrats wanted to die on that hill in Virginia last year. It backfired royally. This year, it seems like some Democrats, especially the woke wing of the party, want to die on that hill again. Again, I'm in Hudson County, Mr. Assemblyman. It's as blue as Windex. Nearby in Bergen County, you know, I'm pretty sure Rob Menendez Jr. will win here in CD8. I'm sure next door in Bergen with Josh Gottheimer, I'm sure he'll relatively win. I'm sure Bill Pascrell will win. Those are kind of safe Democrat incumbents, but that's not the case in other districts in New Jersey where incumbent Democrats are very vulnerable. Who do you see as the most vulnerable House Democrats this year?
Well, I think we can all agree that Tom Malinowski has made things very difficult for himself. We all know that Tom Kean has gotten a fair amount of support from the party and even probably a fair amount of support from the Democrats in his district. Now we still have a primary coming up. But, you know, we're talking about a guy who has spent an enormous portion of his life, Tom Kean, in solidifying the support of voters. You know, politics is not a game where we can just, you know, come barreling in and catch lightning in a bottle. You're not going to. You need to do your homework if you want to get into the decision-making process of being an elected individual. It took me almost 9 years of political action work, fundraising work, working with different legislators up and down the state of New Jersey. And then when I finally decided that I had something to say in Trenton, it was very easy for many people to say, I want to help Christian. I tell people all the time, if you really want to make a difference, it's not magic. You gotta go out there and get the work done and get in front of people for an extended period of time. So we are seeing in New Jersey pockets of people who are trying to sort of, catch on to a movement or sort of, like I said, catch lightning in a bottle politically. It doesn't work. You need to put the time in. You need to put the time in over a span of years. People need to hear how you feel multiple times over multiple years before you really become the guy that they get out of bed on the morning of election day and go vote for.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And again, where I live up here in Hudson County, to the west of me in Bergen and parts of Essex or Passaic, again, Democrats seem to be safe with their House seats. But whether it's Tom Malinowski, I'll even say this: I think even down in South Jersey, Andy Kim, I would argue, is another vulnerable Democrat. That's a very interesting Republican primary. We have sort of an establishment candidate in Healy going up against Ian Smith, who, again, he's been on this show. He's a friend of mine. He's been on here multiple times. He's been sort of this online sensation where he's appeared on Fox News, Newsmax. He's been a speaker at CPAC. Again, he's been a great viral sensation. I think a lot of people might be concerned that, does that translate to votes?
No.
You can have views on your Instagram and on your Facebook. Again, I'm not being mean.
I know.
But we have to be realistic about the way.
There's only one pathway to office, okay? And my opponent made the mistake of thinking that elections are decided from the top down. It doesn't matter who endorses you. It doesn't matter who supports you at the top. Elections are decided from the bottom up.
Yeah.
You need to knock on doors. You need to talk to voters. You need to motivate voters, like-minded voters, to come out and cast as many votes as possible in your name. We have to stop this idea that somehow the media puts people in office. At the state level, the media does not put people in office.
They try. They try. Yeah.
But people at the state level, people put themselves in office. People work to get into office. And that's what I did. And I got rid of a 4-term incumbent who was the most liberal Republican in the state legislature. So the people spoke, and I'm sitting here in front of you.
No, listen, and from people that I talked to off the air, they're very happy with your representation. Certainly looking forward to you doing that again next year in the 25th. Obviously, since redistricting has changed up the districts. Let's get back to some stuff in Trenton real quick here, Mr. Assemblyman, because it is April, and as May 1st is already Sunday, and as mandated by the state constitution, a state budget has to be ratified, passed by both chambers, and signed into law by the governor no later than 11:59 on June 30th. If it is not, and the clock strikes midnight, then the state will shut down. We've seen that not too often in recent years. We saw it in 2017 under Governor Christie. I believe we saw it in 2005 under Governor Corzine. So it has happened, maybe not with frequency. Maybe there's been some last minute, crunch time, up against the clock deals being made to do the budget, obviously have the budget completed as mandated by state law. But it just seems, Mr. Assemblyman, Democrats have the majorities, and even if it's a slight majority, they can ram through what they want. And to some extent, Republicans are a little powerless. But, what are you advocating for? And what are your colleagues in your district, as well as Assembly Republicans, going to really raise hell about when it comes to this budget? I mean, it's sort of self-explanatory. It's exploding. It just seems like unnecessary spending. But what do you want to tackle, or at least what do your colleagues in the Assembly?
Well, I mean, first of all, let me say their majority is smaller than it has been for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
We have more Republicans in the chamber than we did before. I am not a part of the budget committee, Fernando. Okay. And like I said, I've been an Assemblyman for 3 months. So this budget process that starts on May 2nd will be the first time that I'm ever exposed to this process. So I don't have a lot of my understanding of the budget is in a very broad resolution. It's not a fine resolution. I will tell you, this. One of my inspirations economically, and a person that I read and I listen to and I continue to reach out to, despite the fact that he's been gone for years now, is Milton Friedman. We need to reduce spending. Those two words are enormous. Reduce spending anywhere and everywhere possible. If there are things in our budget that we can eliminate, they need to be eliminated. If there are things in our budget that we need to reduce, or that we can reduce, we need to reduce them. I can't stress that enough. Government spending is the number one reason why private sector economies take a dive.
Yeah.
It's also the number one reason why we are seeing so much inflation.
Yeah.
Obviously, supply and demand also has a lot to do with that. But government spending has always produced problems in our economy. Since Jimmy Carter, even before that, the Great Depression in the 1920s was created by the government, by the banking system. So we really need to be very careful. We need to leave people alone. We need to let the economy live on a little bit more on its own. I'm not an advocate of laissez-faire economics. I'm not.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, it's foolish, but what we're doing is oppressive to our economy. We're destroying the private sector. The pandemic didn't make it any better because the pandemic completely strangled the private sector. And as you know, when the private sector fails, the public sector fails, because the public sector draws its revenue from private sector activity.
Yeah.
So we need to now release the reins of government and let the private sector expand so that it can come back in the form of revenue. And be wise about how we collect tax revenue. And don't just collect tax revenue to pay for every little pet project that another bureaucrat has. We can't do that anymore. Unfortunately, I know that my statement is very broad and not very focused. But as I said, I'm very new at this, so I'm not too up to speed as to what that struggle is going to be like once we get in the chamber.
Mr. Assemblyman, again, you're a fiscal conservative after my own heart. I'm the only one really talking about this in media. I'm a staunch fiscal conservative. I'm always talking about reckless spending in Trenton. It almost makes you wonder at some legislators that if they ran their house the way they look at the budget in Trenton, they'd be broke. Yeah, they'd be broke. They'd be living under a cardboard box under Route 1 and 9 on the Pulaski Skyway, probably. It's crazy to me. But again, before I let you go here, I mean, obviously, certainly I want to congratulate you. Obviously, you got elected in November. I know you've been hands-on. Had a chance to meet you in person and talk to you at the Morris County Convention, a good interview we did. Again, folks, if you haven't watched it, check it out at the jerseyfirst.org website. It's there, as well as the Jersey First YouTube page. The Assemblyman was, very interesting to talk to that day during the Morris County Convention. But Mr. Assemblyman, before I let you go again, I really appreciate your time. I know you've had a busy day, and certainly I'm very thankful for you taking the time to come on this show. I hope you're a fan, and I definitely want you to come.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do, Fernando. This takes a lot of time as well, and effort and planning, and I thank you for reaching out to people and letting them know that there's an alternative to what we're going through.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm just trying to be that journalist that is talking about issues that sort of, Uncle Dave, you're right, David Cruz with NJTV and New Jersey Spotlight News, or Tommy Boy, Tom Moran with the Star Liar. I mean, I'm sorry, the Star Ledger. I'm sorry. It's a Freudian slip. But I
don't think there's ever been anything he's written that I've agreed with.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I'm the only one really talking about these fiscal issues because I love New Jersey. I'm born and raised here. I love New Jersey. I'm a proud New Jerseyan, obviously, but it's hard to live here and to do a lot of things here because we're spending so much. whether it's property taxes, cost of living. It's just crazy. So I'm one of those that whenever I can get a guest on to talk about economic issues, hey, listen, my PhD is not in economics, but you don't need a PhD in economics to understand what's going wrong in New Jersey. So I want to thank you for your time because you're a gentleman. I certainly want to get you back on maybe closer towards a budget season, budget crunch time. And even after the budget is passed, we could talk more. So I want to thank you for your time. I'll give you the last word, Mr. Assemblyman.
Well, look, again, I think I already said what my parting words were. Thank you for what you do. Obviously, thank you for the opportunity to reach out to people and at least share my views. As I said to you, reaching people in a campaign is very expensive. So this is sort of a free way of me being able to share my thoughts with people, those who maybe didn't get the chance to meet me. There were many who didn't get a chance to meet me, so this is very helpful. And listen, I say it all the time. We have a lot of work to do, and this is an excellent opportunity for me to be able to share that work and chime in and maybe steer the ship in a little bit of a different direction as a working class Republican. I'm an electrician by trade. I'm not a business owner or an attorney or any other of the dozens of assembly people that are represented in the chamber. I'm a guy that goes to work every morning, puts his pants on, and goes to work. So my approach is a little bit different, a little bit simpler, and we have to reach as many people as possible and help change that conversation. So thank you for the time.
Well, Mr. Assemblyman, again, please tell everyone you're a fan of Real Talk. I look forward to having you back on later on this spring, maybe early summer. We'll talk again from one fellow Cuban to another. I know you're half Argentinian as well, but I think that the parts of us that are very outspoken, that's the Cuban in us, I think.
Watch out.
Absolutely. Folks, he is State Assemblyman Christian Barranco out of the 26th Legislative District. Currently, I know that'll change next year. He'll be going to the 25th. And again, I appreciate your time, Mr. Assemblyman. Thank you so much for joining us here on Real Talk. Make sure you share the episode the rest of the week. And again, we appreciate your time here on Jersey First.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Folks, again, great show here with State Assemblyman Christian Barranco. Certainly look forward to having him back on later this summer. Folks, before I go here, let me finish with something because the last few weeks, I've gotten a lot of excellent feedback from my viewers that, hey, Fernando, your closing segments have been absolute fire in calling out bad actors in journalism, bad actors in general in the state of New Jersey. So I want to go back to do that again this week. And certainly, folks, listen, when it comes to bad journalism in the state of New Jersey, there is no shortage of them. And of course, I don't have time to talk about every single person that's guilty of it. But this week, I want to sort of call out somebody new. Now, in fairness, I do want to give a little bit of a rest to little JJ, a.k.a. Jay Lasser, a.k.a. Insider NJ's resident insufferable waste of life, a.k.a. resident virtue signaler. And, I want to be compassionate because people say, Fernando Uribe is not compassionate. I'm very compassionate. So, you know what? I'm sure he's had a perpetual hard-on since last Thursday with marijuana now being legalized in New Jersey, right? So I'm sure, he went and to a local dispensary and has been smoking weed ever since, and that's all Jay is good for. So I'm not going to pick on Jay this week. I'm compassionate. So, Jay, you can keep on smoking all your cannabis. I'll let you sort of revel in your glory. And I won't pick on you this week, but believe me, I'm sure you'll do something because you're insufferable. And I'm sure you'll write something because you're insufferable that I'll have to call out in the future. So I'll leave you alone for this week. As they say, being Cuban, esta semana te dejo quieto, okay? Because this week I got someone new to pick on because you know what? Again, another bad journalist. And of course, folks, he is the editor-in-chief of Insider NJ, little JJ's boss, Maxie Pizarro, folks. Yes, Max Pizarro. And it's interesting because, folks, this is the thing that I have to call out. I've done it before on this show, and I'll do it again. Now, for the record, I have the highest of opinions for the Graham family, for Michael Graham and Ryan Graham. Not just because they used to compensate me, but because I got to know them personally, and they're upstanding human beings. The problem that they have on their hands is that, unfortunately, they've sort of let Max Pizarro run amok as editor-in-chief of Insider NJ, and thus sort of, I would argue, hurting the credibility of what many people once thought of as a very legitimate news site. That's no longer the case when we know traffic, whether it's the New Jersey Globe, maybe even the New Jersey Monitor is probably doing better than Insider NJ. And folks, one of the ways to fix this is what I'm about to share with you. Now, let me just say this, folks. Obviously, as you know, I always say I'm New Jersey's premier journalist. I'm an award-winning philanthropist. I'm a top Latino. But what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to unofficially anoint myself the unofficial watchdog of bad journalism in New Jersey. So I'm going to take it upon myself to call out bad journalism and bad journalists whenever I see them, okay? And of course, as I mentioned, Max Pizarro is this week's contestant. And folks, you know, when I look at some of the coverage here recently, it's very interesting. So obviously, Maxie had a small blurb recently talking about where, you know, Ross Baraka, the mayor of one cesspool, decided to cross the river to go party with Mayor Eric Adams, the mayor of another cesspool out in Brooklyn, right? Because, you know, of course, obviously, Ross Baraka is being talked about as a legitimate gubernatorial candidate in 2025. He's obviously running for re-election on May 10th, which he'll win easily, and I'm sure so will his slate of council candidates. But of course, what happened, what Max Pizarro forgets to tell you in his blurb here, obviously, is that Adams last week recently welcomed Baraka running for his third term as mayor of New Jersey's biggest city, Newark, to a fundraiser in Manhattan at the Brooklyn Chop House. Of course, the usual Baraka allies showed up, including mayors from other towns and some politicals, which included Atlantic City Mayor Marty Small, talk about a dump in New Jersey, as well as former state senator Dick Cody. Certainly, Mayor Adams out of New York showed his solidarity with Mayor Ross Baraka because, again, of the potential 2025 statewide crack that Baraka might take at governor. Folks, which is really interesting because only a few days later, after Mayor Ross Baraka crossed the Hudson to go to Manhattan to party with Eric Adams, yes, the mayor tested positive for COVID-19 on his 100th day in office. It's just shortly a couple of days after this event. And do you think that Maxie would have the, you know, folks, and here's that really pesky 4-syllable word, integrity, you know, Maxie, that word that you lack. You think maybe it would have dawned on Maxie to report on this? Oh, of course not. Again, it takes integrity. But of course, in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams is crucifying policemen, firefighters who choose not to get vaccinated. But if you watched highlights of the party that Mayor Eric Adams threw for Ross Baraka, there were plenty of people walking around without masks. And isn't that what the left is predicated on? Oh, we have to wear our masks. We have to socially distance with each other because, you know, COVID's still real. Folks, COVID's a serious problem. But we're coming out of this pandemic, clearly. And the numbers are showing that. But don't tell that to Ross Baraka. Don't tell that to Eric Adams, who walked around without a mask. And subsequently, Eric Adams tested positive for COVID just a few days after that event. You think maybe Maxie would have, talked about it perhaps? Maybe would have, discussed it. Oh, that was pretty irresponsible of Eric Adams to do that. Or for Ross Baraka to visit New York City, especially where maybe COVID is still a serious problem. Of course not. Maxie just sort of glossed over it and pretty much just did what I just did, just tossed it aside. But that's what he does. And again, folks, I'm going to be very blunt when I say this. I blame Mike and Ryan Graham. Guys, you've let Maxie run amok. You've let Maxie to his own devices, as they say, with no supervision, with no management whatsoever. And this is why we're getting garbage journalism. Would it have dawned on you, Maxie, to even write even a small column about how irresponsible Eric Adams was? Right? Because we don't know who went to that event for Ross Baraka. We have an idea, but wasn't that irresponsible? Aren't you part of that liberal media echo chamber that talks about, oh, well, people, all these anti-vaxxers and all these people that are against masks? Yeah, I'm against masks. I'm not vaccinated, and I'm proud to say that. 2 years have come and gone. I won. I'm not vaccinated. I'm not going to get vaccinated. Okay? So for all the hysteria and hoopla of the pandemic, well, it's now the endemic. That's what it is. But you wouldn't know that at Insider NJ. Why? Because Maxi Pizarro chooses not to write about it. And again, he's not just alone. I don't want to just put all the blame. I want to put the blame on his bosses because it's you guys that should be taking the reins here. Okay? What does it say about the general manager of Insider NJ being one of the co-chairs of the Hawthorne Municipal Democratic Committee? Folks, let me tell you something. I'm a lot of things. All right? But you don't see me in my capacity as a journalist deciding to run for either the local Republican municipal committee or even the Democratic municipal committee, which I'm sure I could run because I have friends in both parties. Why? Because I want to maintain some semblance of objectivity, of integrity. My God, that pesky 4-syllable word. But you wouldn't know that because the general manager of Insider NJ is exactly that. The chair of the Hawthorne Municipal Democratic Committee, but he's running a news site? How is that not a conflict of interest? How is the Graham family allowing this? How is Maxi, right? Because you have so much integrity, right? And you like to write about things and expose things. Like, are you okay with this too? This is the problem with Insider NJ, folks. They've become garbage journalism. Where, again, a story like Ross Baraka going over the Hudson, that's not the big story. The big story is that the mayor of New York tested positive for COVID. Don't you think you should be maybe writing a column, raising a red flag somewhere that this is a problem? Of course not, Maxi. You would rather focus on these like garbage council races in Newark that folks, we know who's going to win there. Okay. And on the morning of May 11th, the day after, the morning after election day, Newark is still going to be a dump. You couldn't give a house away to me to live in Newark. Are you crazy? I like going to Newark to go watch the Devils when they're at Prudential Center or when WWE's in town or when All Elite Wrestling's in town or maybe when Rutgers plays Seton Hall basketball. But I don't want to go to other parts of Newark. It's a dump. It's a cesspool. Are you kidding me? Newark is still going to be a cesspool from here on in. But of course, God forbid Max Pizarro would write about that. He'd rather write about what's going on in the 3rd Ward in Newark, which no one gives a blank about. Again, that's just one example. Let me give you another example, folks, where, again, integrity seems to be absent at Insider NJ. Now, let me give you a little bit of a pretext here about what Insider NJ does, because for all intents and purposes, whether it's Max or the hierarchy, what you're doing is whoring yourselves out for money. Because if all it takes to publish something on your site is just to give you money, what does that say about the journalistic integrity of Insider NJ? Now, you might turn around and for people who know me, know that I also host a weekly podcast in Hudson County. Folks, yes, I get advertising from local municipalities, but not once does any municipality say to me, hey, Fernando, this is what you need to talk about. They want to have some sort of semblance of control over the editorial. No one has any control over my editorial. They never have and they never will. I know what to say. I know what not to say, but nobody owns my media brand per se. Yeah, there's advertising dollars that come to me, but that's a different story, okay? No one's asking me, hey, you need to talk about this because we're paying for advertising. That's never happened, folks, and it's not going to happen because, again, I handle myself with, wait for it, integrity. Folks, that 4-syllable word that seems to be absent whenever there's a conference call or a staff meeting at Insider NJ. Case in point, let me look at this. So Insider NJ feels that, again, because she donates money or pays to have her content up there, we have, of course, Patty Cash. That's my nickname for Patricia Campos Medina, right? One of those left-wing activists that somehow, because she gives money, why not post her stuff on Insider NJ? Patty Campos Medina, right? Patty Cash, right? She's the host of Activista Rise Up. Like she's being that typical insufferable Latina, right? When, bobbing that head everywhere, when she's giving her show, folks, by the way, if you ever need a cure for insomnia, never mind Max Pizarro's video interviews, which will just put you to sleep. Trust me, okay? When you watch him, it looks like he's inside of a broom closet there. I mean, it's laughable. But what's even more laughable is Insider NJ's justification to have someone like Patty Campos Medina on their platform. Why? Because she gives you money to buy advertising and then to espouse this. Folks, here's one of the captions which really makes me laugh. Another season, this is recently, another season begins this week of Activista Rise Up, a forum for activists to engage everyday people on the work of promoting social and economic justice. I'm doing my best Patty Campos Medina imitation. If you watch her show, you can see the accent's awful. Okay. This show is hosted by Dr. Patricia Campos Medina, a leader and educator with field research, policy, legislative, and program development background, and a record of applied experience on the development of strategic union organizing, electoral, and worker justice, as well as community campaigns. Folks, let me tell you something. You watch 5 minutes of this insufferable woman, as well as her guests, which include, for example, Amy Torres, another insufferable human, right? The executive director of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, another left-wing bleeding heart group. But when you watch this stuff, folks, this is a grown woman, right? Like in her probably early 70s, early to mid 70s, that is this staunch Bernie supporter, right? And you know what that tells me? That you don't know anything about economics. Because if you're going to support someone like Bernie Sanders, who's economically illiterate, right? And we all know it is, because we've seen his record, right? Like, what's his biggest accomplishment in the U.S. Senate? Renaming a post office after a nobody in the god-awful dump of a state known as Vermont? I mean, that's his biggest accomplishment. Or when you ask Bernie Sanders, oh, well, everyone should have a government job. That's on the record because it's there. You can easily Google it. Oh, but then he doesn't know how to pay for it. These are the people that Patty Cash looks up to, that she advocates for, because she's just as economically illiterate as others, whether it's Bernie Sanders himself or his supporters. Do you think Insider NJ at any point in time would maybe say, maybe it hurts our credibility having an economic illiterate like Patty Cash on our platform? Of course not. Why? Let's whore ourselves out for money. If she's giving us money, yes, we'll post her Activista Rise Up on YouTube because I'm Patty Campos Medina, insufferable Latina that knows nothing about economics. That's the show, basically, when you watch it. Okay? Or, for example, posting other things, whether it's episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. Here's a doozy, folks. The latest edition of Activista Rise Up, season 3. I can't believe there've been 3 seasons of this garbage. Episode 3, discussion on the housing crisis with Stacey Berger, a housing and neighborhood advocate. Folks, that's a blatant dishonesty by someone like Max Pizarro and the hierarchy at Insider NJ. Because if you look at Stacey Berger, whether it's her Twitter feed or any social media, this woman's as full-blown leftist as you can find. Okay, but of course, Insider NJ is going to try to smooth it out, and they don't want to sort of make her out to be the crazy leftist as she is. Again, another economic illiterate like the host, Patty Campos Medina. Why? Because they're taking money. Because, again, they would rather just take in money and publish whatever than have some journalistic integrity. Again, that pesky 4-letter word. Shame on you, Max. You should know better. You're a grown-ass man in your late 60s, early 70s that's been in this business forever and should do better. But of course, you know, nobody at Insider NJ is going to reprimand you. No one's going to sit you down and have it come to Jesus and say, hey, Max, you should do a better job. And that's why Mike and Ryan Graham are complicit. And so is Pete Onelia. Pete, I love you. You were always a very good boss to me, but I got to call you out, bro, because you don't ever call out anybody, you know, and that's the problem with Insider NJ. You're going to let anybody just get on the platform. People might say, well, Fernando, you are an Insider NJ. Yeah, but I'm a reputable host. I have multiple graduate degrees. I know what I'm talking about. I'm an award-winning journalist. Okay, so people can say, well, Fernando's being braggadocious. He's being cocky. He's being smug. He's being arrogant. Folks, it's not bragging if you can back it up. And by the way, look behind me. I can't back it up. Okay, but again, this is where Insider NJ does an enormous disservice to its readership. At least be honest. Yes, we'll take money and we'll publish whatever it is you want us to publish because we have no journalistic integrity. Folks, when you see garbage like this, okay, from once again, the host and executive producer of Activista Rise Up, Patricia Campos Medina, folks, is the next to Max Pizarro, is probably the second biggest source of a cure of insomnia you'll see anywhere in New Jersey media. Because when you watch this show, it is a bleeding heart fest. Okay? You can't take her seriously. Folks, anybody who's a socialist, anybody who's a leftist, anybody who's clearly illiterate when it comes to economics, how do you expect me to take you seriously? You don't need a PhD in economics to understand what left-wingers are trying to advocate for. But somehow Insider NJ thinks it's okay. Somehow Maxi Pizarro thinks it's okay to do this. And I don't know about you, but that's a problem. And I'm going to keep calling out bad journalism and specifically bad journalists when I have to. So yes, I am now the unofficial watchdog of bad journalism here in New Jersey. I've been calling out Uncle Dave with NJ Spotlight News. Yes, he's having, again, another guy who's probably having another perpetual hard-on about his New York Mets. Yay, they're 11-5 in April. Yay. Talk to me in October when Citi feels dark because the lights are turned off because no one's playing in Citi Field. Or Tommy Moran with the Star Ledger, whose circulation is dwindling by the week. And also even now, folks, with Insider NJ, what does it say when they decide to give a platform to someone who's an economic illiterate, like Patricia Campos Medina? Folks, it's a disservice to you. Now, I don't do that, okay? I have my opinions, but I'm an opinion journalist. I'm not going to attempt to come out here and pretend to be something I'm not. But I'll tell you this much. The little I know about economics is effective enough to tell you that, you know what? By the way, I know what I'm talking about. People like Patty Cash, clearly not. But somehow, because she gives money to Insider NJ, they feel compelled to give her a platform. Shame on you guys. Seriously, shame on you. You should know better. Mike and Ryan, I love you guys. You're gentlemen. I'm always going to think highly of you. Okay? Believe me, I have no problem drinking at the League of Municipalities at the Insider NJ party, at Tropicana later on this year. I have no problem drinking, at the Insider NJ party, drinking for free. I have no problem with you guys. What I have a problem is the fact that you need to call out bad people working for you, like Maxi Pizarro, like Jay Lassiter, journalists who are doing a disservice to New Jerseyans. Because I know what the answer is going to be. Well, we get viewership. Oh, well, we get traffic. Well, listen, folks, there are a lot of dumb people in New Jersey that subscribe to a lot of this nonsense too. So I'm aware of that. But Max, if you want to do better, don't give clowns like this woman a platform. Just don't do it. That's when maybe you'll start being taken seriously again. But as long as you keep whoring yourself out for money and keep allowing anybody to publish whatever they want because they give you money, not you specifically, but the institution of Insider NJ, you know what? Insider NJ is going to keep being in the toilet like it is. Don't give me, because you don't break anything anymore. You're not the New Jersey Globe. You're not the New Jersey Mail. You don't break anything. It's either press release or repeating the same column every so often on social media every other day. That's not breaking stuff. That might be breaking the mouse button on your keyboard maybe and double clicking, but that's not breaking anything. You need to do better, Max. And right now, again, if you don't do better, I'm going to keep calling you out. It's as simple as that. And I don't have a problem saying this to you because the next time I run into you, I got no problem saying it to you. I got no problem saying this to anybody because, again, it's why I have integrity. Again, folks, that pesky four-syllable word, integrity. Look it up, Max. Look it up, Pete. Maybe you forgot what the dictionary definition is, but I know what integrity is because I practice it every single week on the show. You might have to go back to the drawing board and look up what the word means. Again, as long as you keep putting up garbage content like Patricia Campos Medina and her left-wing views, is anyone really going to take you seriously? I seriously doubt it. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank State Assemblyman Christian Barranco for appearing today on the show. As always, you can check out this episode in its entirety at the Jersey First YouTube page and also on the Jersey First website, www.jerseyfirst.org. That's Jersey, 1st.org. Make sure you like Jersey First on Facebook. And, of course, also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Folks, I can't say enough to everyone that attended Memories Matter last week to benefit the Act Now Foundation. Yes, I'm still rocking the purple for Alzheimer's and dementia awareness again at the world-famous Son Cubano. Can't say enough for all my guests that showed up last week. Thank you to everybody, family, friends, and everyone in between for showing their support for the Act Now Foundation. Once again, check out their website, www.actnow.foundation.org. And of course, you can make sure you like Real Talk on Facebook. And of course, make sure you follow me on Twitter. Very happy about the news on Twitter today. Make sure you follow me at No Filter Uribe. That's at No Filter Uribe. And also follow me on Instagram at The Amazing Professor. And also check out this show on Instagram as well at Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is always Real Talk right here on Facebook Live and also on YouTube. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via Latino Spirit Online magazine, and of course, your favorite award-winning philanthropist, Fernando Uribe, saying so long. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, thank you for supporting Jersey First every single week here live on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Facebook Live and also on YouTube. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. And I'll see you next week here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe.